Okay, a couple of things we need to get out of the way. First of all, my next question and answers video. Tomorrow is the deadline. You have until tomorrow at noon to submit your questions. So, if you haven't submitted your questions yet and you would like to, put them down in the comment section below. Like I said, you get one wrestling-related question and one non-wrestling-related question. So, go nuts, have fun. You have until noon tomorrow to submit your questions. And then I will probably have the video done sometime in August. So, that sound good for everybody? Okay, fine. A couple things I want to get into. Well, two big things. Number one, I have to preview Battleground, but before I do that, let's talk about what happened on Raw this week, the big Sting vignette, which I'm so glad I didn't do a Sting preview video, and instead get to be more reactionary to the vignette that aired on Raw, which hypes up Sting for the video game. Which is kind of disappointing, actually, because the vignette itself was actually kind of awesome. And that's the type of stuff that goes hand in hand with Sting. Is like, Sting is usually, especially since he started doing the Crow gimmick way back in, '97, production-wise, they always got, like, good video packages out of him, and, the music and the face paint and everything and all the ways they could play with it. And you had Turner's budget behind it. And even when he was in TNA, they got a lot of cool video packages out of him. And, you mix WWE production with a character like Sting, and it should yield something pretty cool. And I thought what they did was pretty cool, and I did mark out a little when the violinist was playing the old-school WCW Sting Crow theme. So the vignette itself was awesome, and just a great example of how awesome the Sting character is, and how awesome WWE production can be when when they have a vision and they know what they want to do with it. It's just a shame that it was just to hype up a video game, because it was like, oh man, that was actually pretty sweet. But I think it's a pretty good indicator that Sting's worked out some kind of a deal with the WWE, whether it be, a standard Legends contract or a short-term deal or whatever. So I think we can expect to see Sting appear on WWE television, probably in time for WrestleMania season, whether it be him going into the Hall of Fame or doing that match with Undertaker that everybody wants. Personally, I don't want Sting to wrestle, and I've said that before. I'm sorry, my phone's going off. Did I get a message? Yeah, I did. Okay, I'll answer that later. It's from the anonymous Raw GM. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. Sting is in his mid-50s. And Undertaker, for those of you who saw his performance at WrestleMania 30, it's funny. The streak ended at WrestleMania 30, and everybody was kind of like having this debate. It's like, oh, does that hurt Undertaker's legacy to do that? That the streak is over or anything? And I'm just sitting there like, no, the streak ending doesn't hurt Undertaker's legacy, but that shit-ass performance he put on sure does. Because if that's Undertaker's last match, it's like, oh, wow, what a shitty way to go. It's like, that's not how I would want to remember Undertaker. I think Bret hurt his legacy by coming back and doing the quote-unquote matches that he did, like the match with Vince and beating Miz for the U.S. title, and him being in that Nexus match where he did almost nothing. That was his best performance upon return, and it showcased Bret in a way that I never wanted to see Bret Hart showcased, in that he's limited, can't bump, old as dirt, and should not be in the ring. And those are the type of things that bother me, and I'm just... Undertaker's probably, maybe not, I mean, he's not as bad as Bret, but, he doesn't look like Taker anymore. And Sting, towards the end there in TNA, it's like, dude, you look old and kind of fat, and you're balding, and you don't look like Sting anymore. And granted, the face paint hides a lot of it, but it's like, do the DVD, do some stuff on the network, go into the Hall of Fame. Those are all things that Steve Borden Sting absolutely deserves, and I wouldn't question any of those things. And he even deserves to have a match in the WWE. I just don't think that... I can't think of any that I would want to see at this point. What, tag him up with Cena? I don't want to fucking see that. I have no desire to see that at all. Watch Cena buddy-buddy with a legend again? No, that's... Just no. I don't need that. So... I personally don't want to see Sting wrestle, but I think they're going to do that Sting-Undertaker match, and it's just, I would have been fine with it in 2001, 2002, even as late as, like, 2007, 2008. 2009, even in that range. But now I think the window's closed on that. It's not going to be the match that we all envision it to be. Although, granted, production-wise, with the preview packages and the promos and everything, it'll probably be amazing. But the stuff leading up to it will be amazing. But I don't think the match itself will be as I don't think it'll live up to the hype or live up to people's imaginations and expectations. And how can it? I mean, both guys are so far past their prime. It's criminal. But yeah, I say just put Sting in the Hall of Fame, and maybe you can do an angle with him on TV for like special appearances or something, and get a pop out of the crowd, which they love to do with the legends. So they could probably do that as well. But as far as him wrestling Taker, nah, don't want to see it. And now it's time for my preview of WWE Battleground 2014, complete with predictions on the show. And the show's happening tomorrow night, and I'm definitely going to check it out because I have a subscription to the network, and those, that's one of the perks of having the network. Yeah, but I got to say, the card itself is actually quite well set up. And one of my criticisms for WWE pay-per-views for pretty much ever since I started doing videos, that they kind of just feel like they throw cards together and they throw matches on there and they do their bonus matches that they throw on at the last minute without any kind of announcement or anything. But this card, not so bad. It's actually fairly well structured, fairly well put together from a build-up standpoint. I think the weakest part of it is actually the main event, which I'll get into that last. But going through the card, on the pre-show we have the grudge match of the Funkadactyls explode as Naomi takes on the freshly turned heel Cameron. Again, this is actually like a decently done split. It's not the best thing ever, but at least as far as like showcasing the divas, it's a grudge match that actually makes some kind of sense, and it makes it look like the division actually has some kind of depth. I actually wouldn't have minded if they'd put this on the main card and held off on AJ and Paige until SummerSlam, but yeah, nobody has that kind of willingness to put stuff off anymore, which I'll get into that when I talk about Rollins and Dean Ambrose. But yeah, it's a decent little Divas grudge match to have. I think Cameron is terrible, so I don't think the match will be very good anyway. But I think Naomi's pretty good. I think she's a good, solid athlete that does some pretty impressive things in there, and she clearly works hard. So yeah, hopefully she goes over and then she moves on to bigger and better things. They work her into the, get her moving up the ranks towards ultimately getting a title shot or something and creating a new top contender for Paige or AJ. So yeah, I think she's pretty solid. So we'll see what happens there. Then going on to the main card, we have the Battle Royal, a 20-man Battle Royal for the vacant Intercontinental Championship, which is a good way to resolve an unfortunate situation because we lost Bad News Barrett as Intercontinental Champion, something I was actually enjoying. After years of not liking Wade Barrett, I finally start to like him, and then he goes and gets hurt. It's just, it just never works out, does it? But yeah, I think the Battle Royal is a decent way to resolve the issue. I think it's going to go to either The Miz, who they've reintroduced, and they've given him a new character and persona that they seem to want to push, or Cesaro, who has... It's clear that they want to do something with him, but they haven't quite found that direction yet. Right now, he's just beating the shit out of people after he loses matches. They're like, okay, that's fine, and you're making him look dangerous, but put him on the path of victories, and that's a good way to build somebody up. And, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he won. Also, he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania, so they could make that a thing with him, that he's sort of the new king of the Battle Royals. So that's something I would do. So if it were up to me, I would give it to Cesaro. But, we shall see. They definitely have a handful of options, but I think it's going to come down to either Miz or Cesaro. I think those are your two options that they'll most likely go with, preferably Cesaro. Speaking of titles, we have the Tag Team Championship up. The Wyatts versus the Usos, who are the champions, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. This is one of those feuds that they've had like 8 million matches, and they've really kind of cut the legs out from underneath the feud, because you really can't do much going beyond this match. We've already seen the match 8 million times. They haven't really done a good job of building anticipation for a rematch, but the matches themselves are actually quite good, so, half a dozen in one, 6 in the other, I guess. But it's, I expect a really good match out of these two teams, and hopefully it'll be a nice, feud ender, and hopefully they go out there and just have an excellent match. And 2 out of 3 falls matches and tag matches typically are really, really good. I think back to Beer Money and the Machine Guns in TNA, and the Hearts and Demolition match at SummerSlam 1990, and various other matches. So, tag team action just seems to lend itself naturally to 2 out of 3 falls. So, I'm looking forward to this, and I think it'll turn out to be a really good match. And I would give the belts to the Wyatts, and then ultimately set them up for a feud with the Dust Brothers, I guess, Stardust and Goldust, which, again, I do really like Stardust. And I think Cody's playing his ass off, making that character work. And I think it does work, and I think the Dust Brothers are a good tag team. So there's something to look forward to. What else? We have the Divas Championship, Paige versus AJ Lee. Again, this is something that they could have held off on. I think the feud, or the storyline they have going now, where Paige and AJ are kind of friends, and then ultimately, Paige is obviously going to turn heel and turn on AJ, and then that'll set up a more volatile match down the road. So I wish they'd kind of held off on doing the rematch so quickly, and rather do something where they do the turn first and then slowly build to the bigger match at SummerSlam. Maybe do the match they had a couple weeks ago, do the Funkadactyls versus AJ and Paige at this pay-per-view, and Cameron and Paige both turn heel and turn on their partner. Just do something really wacky like that. I don't know. It could have been weird. But I do think throwing AJ back into the mix has made the Divas division a lot more interesting, and has given it more of a spark. And that hopefully that'll translate into giving Paige a bit of a rub and making her more interesting. Because like I said, she was kind of struggling as champion. And I don't believe that's necessarily her fault. It's just you give somebody the belt the first night in, you're not really giving them a whole lot of room to grow and develop. So there's that. But I think this could be a good match, and I expect AJ to keep the title but Paige to turn heel. So that'll be a likely scenario there. What else is next? We got Rusev versus Swagger, which this is a grudge match that even though I'm sick of the anti-American characters, and I think it's trite, and it's like Futurama, that old joke. I have different I have different customs. I am not from here, and that's basically the extent of those type of characters. It doesn't really make much. It doesn't create much intrigue for me, the anti-American character, but the way they turned Jack Swagger face was so natural and so well done, and the audience just bought it so instantly because it made sense, and it really did away with that whole thing that I hate where, there's that invisible line and the baby faces are all on one side and they're all friends, and all the heels are on the other side and they're all friends. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. These are people, these are characters that are individuals and have their own wants, desires, and all this other stuff. So to have the Real Americans and Zeb Coulter and Jack Swagger oppose Rusev and Lana, it really makes sense, and you don't even have to explain it because it just makes sense from a character standpoint that you would do that clash, and it just clicked instantly. And they did nothing to change Swagger and Coulter as characters. They just put them up against somebody that they would be a natural opposite to, and it worked. And that's a good grudge match. And it's not rocket science. That's just solid writing. I think Rusev is going to win, and I think he should win. They're building him up fairly well, actually. A lot of the things that they're doing with him are actually pretty solid in building up a big monster heel. I just don't like the whole anti-American angle because I think it's, like I said, I think it's old and played out, and there's not a whole lot you can really do with it. But as far as building up a monster goes, I think they've done a good job with him, and I look for him to win this match, and hopefully we'll see where he grows and develops from there. So there is that, and what else is there? I'm trying to think. There's Y2J versus Bray Wyatt. Not much of a feud here. I'm not even sure why Wyatt is targeting Jericho. That hasn't been explained real well. But I think Jericho being in it, his first pay-per-view match back, is going to create a bit of a spark. And hopefully Bray gets something out of this, because he was really damaged after the Cena feud. It just seemed to derail his whole character, because that whole feud just didn't make any sense. And he was so hot coming out of like the Daniel Bryan thing and the Shield thing, and then once he got tangled with Cena, the whole feud just kind of... It was just bad writing. The feud just didn't make any sense, and it just kind of derailed his character, and they need to fix that with him. And I think putting him in there with Jericho will at least put him in a situation where he's going to work with a guy that's going to go out of his way to make him look good, And I wouldn't be surprised if Jericho won, but if it were up to me, I would give it to Bray and then possibly do a rematch down the road. So, we shall see what happens there. God, what else is on this card? There was one other match I really wanted to see. I'm trying to think. I've forgotten about it. Well, it's gone. Well, the big match that I'm looking forward to, and to me is really the major selling point of this whole card, is Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. I think this feud has been fantastic. I love it. It's fantastic. It's just great all around, and I love both characters. I love Dean Ambrose as a babyface. He's my favorite babyface in the company right now. So, I think this match could potentially be a show stealer. I just think it's a natural match to do. I would have, again, this is my long-term thinking brain, I would have held off on this match until SummerSlam and maybe do, I don't know, like, I wish this pay-per-view wasn't happening, actually. Just no pay-per-view here, just no major roadblocks, and just build to SummerSlam, the bigger show. But, whatever. I think Seth is probably going to go over, if I had to guess. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did a double DQ or something and then do a big gimmick match at the next pay-per-view, which that'll be even better. If they can do it that way, that would be great. Do like a cage match or something. Something where, or a Falls Count Anywhere match where rules can't contain them. And that seems to be what they're going for with this rivalry, where there are no boundaries and the rules just don't apply to them and they just can't be contained. So put them in like a no-holds-barred match or a cage match or something of the like, that they can just have this really great gimmick match to really shine and put on just a fantastic outing. And I think this match has potential to be very exciting and very good. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think it could potentially be the best match on the show. And then we have the main event, which I already said is kind of the weakest part of the show. It's Cena defending the title against Orton, Kane, and Roman Reigns in a four-way. And the reason it's the weakest part of the show is because we know Cena's going to win. We know it's going to be Cena and Lesnar at SummerSlam. We know that nothing's going to happen to derail that. So Cena's going to win. We have no reason to think otherwise. That's just how it is. Cena's going to win. We know. It's one of those situations where I wish they didn't have a world title match on this pay-per-view, because what's the point of having a match that we all know what the outcome's going to be and we don't even care all that much? Like, it's not like, oh, Austin, I know Austin's going to win the title at WrestleMania 14, but I want to see it because I love Austin. It's not even that. It's just like, okay, what, do you want to see Cena win again for the 8 billionth time? Okay, if that's what tickles your fancy, I don't really care at this point, but the one shining bright part of this match is Roman Reigns, and I think putting him in this spot is a good test for him, and hopefully he shines. And I have no reason to think he won't. He's done pretty well for himself so far in the singles push. So look for Reigns to do some cool stuff in this match and hopefully shine a little bit. He's not going to win, but if they want to make a main eventer out of him, and if they do that Lesnar-Roman Reigns WrestleMania match that's been talked about, they've got him on a pretty good direction to ultimately building him up to that point. So I hope he does well in this, and hopefully this is a bit of a star maker for him. But other than that, Cena's going to win. Don't really care. And that's the end of that. So, yeah, that's all I have for now. Hopefully you all enjoy Battleground. And I'll have a review for it up sometime next week. And again, this is your last chance to post questions for my question and answers video. Post them down below in the comments section. Yeah, everybody gets one wrestling question, one non-wrestling question. So noon tomorrow is the cutoff point. So go ahead and get those in, very, very quickly. And for those of you who have already submitted your questions, thank you very much. And I'll have that video up in a couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy Battleground. And peace out, everybody.